Sherry, I've thought for some time now that if women ran the world, we'd probably be a lot safer, among other things. We've got all these egomaniacs running around the world, meeting up to see whose dangling fury is the longest, while wars rage on, featuring nuclear superpowers, which is a little bit frightening. Did you see that the fun bunch, Xi and Un and Pootie, met up last week? Nothing makes me rest easier than that little bridge club exchanging nuclear codes. Well, I don't want to dwell on politics. That's enraging for everybody. Although this podcast is about conflict management, so
yeah,
I don't feel guilty about starting that way. I've taken my belief that women need to run the world one step further. Would you like to hear about that?
Yes.
You say
Mr.
a little
Feminist.
bit reluctantly, a little bit nervously?
No, I know that you're a feminist, so I know you believe in this.
Preteen English girls seem to be the smartest, wittiest, take no bullshit demographic that there is. Now, stick with me.
Okay.
Everyone has seen, yourself included, the little English girl who gets pissed off at the ice cream man.
Oh, okay, yeah, with her very thick British accent.
£2? He'll get nowhere with those prices. I can't do it.
She's much cuter.
I hope he can hear me, she screams back in his direction.
I'm like, I want to adopt this girl. This is my, like, what I would like to be like. She's so upset about the cost of ice cream, and I don't blame her.
Well, I thought it was just her, but there must be something in the water, because I found a new one. This little English girl tells her dad that if her mom gets another crappy gift from her dad, that the mom said she was going to burn the gift. And so the little girl says, "Dad, I think you should get her a candle." And then she cackles wildly. I just love it. I think female English children, especially, yes, female English children, they seem to have a confidence and intellect that most kids lack. We're over here trying to keep glue sticks out of kids' mouths and teaching them how to tie their Velcro shoes, while English girls start their stand-up careers at age 6. No wonder we're in the predicament we're in on this side of the pond. We need more English girls running shit. That's what I think. You down with that?
One seems a little saucy. She might be a little aggressive, but I love it.
Look, I married you. I like saucy.
That's true.
Bring me the saucy. I would love to introduce someone to our audience who is smart, clever, and creative, so much so that she might have once been an English preteen girl. Who knows? Maybe she'll break some news about her origin story right here on the Untoxicated podcast. Lara Hammock is a licensed clinical social worker, licensed in Virginia, Maryland, and Washington, D.C., and she is a mental health therapist. She works with adults, both individuals and couples, working through the impacts of anxiety, depression, ADHD, addiction, obsessive compulsive disorder, bipolar disorder, trauma, and relationship issues. Now, Sherry, as you know, I check a couple of those boxes, which might be why I love you so much, Lara. Thank you for being on the Untoxicated podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So were you once a preteen English girl? Let's just get that out of the way right off the bat.
I was a preteen girl, but unfortunately not in English, much to my dismay and probably yours as well.
Yeah, well, with the smarts and cleverness you've got going on, I just thought, and I had to ask, so that introduction aside, there's lots more detail about your training, your approach. I'm really impressed with your website, and so I want to direct people there. It'll be linked in the show notes. We will also talk a little bit more about it at the end when we're wrapping this discussion up. But I'll tell people right off the top, if you just can't wait and you want to maybe check out her offerings while we're having this discussion, go to LaraHammockTherapy.com, Lara, Hammock with 2 M's, therapy.com. Like I said, it'll be linked in the show notes. And the details that I talk about your training and your approach, feel free to work those into this discussion as we go along, Lara. I want to start with a tough question for you. I hope you're ready. Your handle, your IG handle, you mentioned on your website, is the Illustrating Therapist. Where did that come from?
So I am somebody who messes around with digital art as well as being a therapist. And these were kind of two separate things for a really long time. Um, Meaning I had a digital art practice and doing all kinds of things, trying to, just messing around really. And I saw clients, individuals and couples. And then at a certain point, my brain also throws up metaphors to me constantly, and images. And at a certain point, I realized that I could combine the two, and I could actually illustrate some of the concepts that my brain's throwing up at me. So I mostly on my Instagram, for example, it's more of a discipline. I post something every other day, but they're mostly just like sketches. Um, but I also do presentations for clients and illustrate them. So that's where it comes from. I'm the illustrating therapist.
That's great. We're going to talk about the Come To worksheet and method today, but one of the other things that's very prevalent, right, up front and easy to find on your website is a thermometer. That's something you digitally illustrated as well, I assume, right? Can you explain to people what that's all about?
Yeah, so it's one of the most important tools that I use with my clients, which is the emotional thermometer. And it's really just a scaling methodology for anybody who kind of is familiar with this in therapy. And that is, on a scale from 0 to 10, how upset are you right now? And most people can kind of clock themselves, right? I'm at a 4 out of 10 of intensity, or I'm at a 6 out of 10 of intensity. And it looks different for every person. Some people get really shaky, or angry, and some people kind of shut down and dissociate, or get really flat and exhausted when they start to get really, really upset. But either way, it's super important to me as a way to understand what the client is experiencing. And it's super important as a decision making tool in terms of, is it a good time for me to be making decisions right now? Is it a good time for me to engage with my partner? Because depending on where you are, where your emotional temperature is, if you're above a 5 out of 10 of intensity, it's probably not a great time to engage. That conversation, probably not going to go that well. So not only is it a good way to sort of be self-aware, but it is a useful tool to be able to talk with your partner about and to make decisions about whether or not, you should engage or not. And yes, that is something that I drew. I mean, again, it's one of the visuals that my brain throws up to me. And so if I'm saying just 0 to 10, immediately my brain is turning that into something. It's got color, and it'll be, 5 different things. So I've gone through a couple of different things before I came up with the or the emotional thermometer.
Well, I love the visual. I love the color codedness. I think the red, the yellow, it just helps to really tie into the emotion piece along with the number. And I can attest to the fact that this is a helpful practice. I don't know where I got this. Somewhere along the lines, soccer coaching, it was suggested to me to ask a soccer team to give numbers at the beginning of practice. And when you're not in an environment where maybe talking about emotions, there's room for that or there's time for that, just going around and everyone say their number as it relates to how they're feeling is really helpful, because you can, if somebody says I'm a 1, you can be like, okay, we're gonna go kind of easy on this person. We're gonna support them in any way we can during this training session, because obviously they're having a bad day that they don't want to talk about. We don't have time to listen anyway, but we're not going to ride this person too hard. And so I love that you use that in your practice, having an awareness of where is everybody coming in. It's helpful to direct where we're going. So I love
And
that.
I forgot that you use that in your calls, right? Right? Like you have everybody sign in, they talk about, where you're from, and then you give your number. Now your numbers are opposite of mine, right? The higher on my emotional thermometer, the more upset you are, right? So yours are like, it's more like the higher are you, the better off you are.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And
So you have kind of like the reverse scaling for me. Not that it matters, right? Like in the end, it's just consistency. That's the important thing. But I think what you're saying is, not only is it important for the person who's aware of how they're feeling to be able to make decisions about how they engage, but it's also helpful for the people around them when they've communicated it to make sure that we can, we treat them accordingly. If they're feeling a little fragile, then you want to be careful. If they're feeling pretty robust, then you can be a little bit more challenging.
That's right. It's always good to know when someone's coming in hot, or the opposite. Absolutely. One of the things I love the most about you, and we've kind of led into this talking about the illustrations you do and the tools that you implement, is you don't just use kind of proven or maybe even stale interventions that maybe you found in a textbook while you were being trained along the way. You create. You're very creative, not just illustratively, but like the interventions that you use are unique and they're awesome. And I was wondering if you could just give us, okay, we know you weren't a preteen English girl, but tell us what is up with your background. Where does that creativity come from? Are there family influences on that?
Well, the first thing that really helps is that I didn't become a therapist until I was almost 50. And so if you become a therapist when you're young, then I think you sort of lack this life wisdom and the confidence to be able to kind of strike out on your own and be like, that one's good, but it could be enhanced.
Sure.
So I think that has a big part to play in this. But the second thing is, I come from this family of creative people. And by creative, I don't necessarily mean they're artists or they're musicians. I mean, some of them are that, but just people who think outside the box. So my dad was a clinical psychologist for most of my childhood. But he also has a master's degree in mechanical engineering. And so around the time that I was in college, he and my brother, he actually invented something for nature photographers. And then he and my brother started a business. And so they invent stuff. They're inventors. So I think that the idea of coming up with tools and solving problems is something that runs in the blood. And it makes sense, I think, that I apply it to the thing that I'm most interested in.
Mm-hmm. That's so cool. I didn't know that engineering and psychology could fit into the same brain without it spontaneously combusting. So that's pretty cool.
Well, my dad is a pretty interesting person.
I bet.
I'm not saying
Maybe
that his brain hasn't spontaneously combusted.
Just internally combusted, perhaps.
Smoke coming out of ears sometimes.
But I think that the conversations that we've had off of the microphone and knowing you, so you kind of grew up in an environment where creativity looks like so many different things. So just getting, and probably with your dad's degree, not in the mechanical engineering, but in the clinical psychology, is like getting people to figure out what works best for them and how their brain is thinking. Like, I love the illustrations, and you've been on our Marriage Evolution call, and you hosted a little session with them, and you had illustrations. And for me, I don't necessarily think my brain turns everything like metaphors into an illustration, but I appreciate the illustrations because it gives me something to think about when I'm like, it's a thermometer, when I'm thinking of where I'm at on that scale. Can I bring something to Matt? Can I bring something to someone else? Can I calm myself down and then have a better conversation about this? So I think it's really helpful for those of us that are visual learners to see those little illustrations. I appreciate it.
I think it helps to make some of these abstract concepts, because really, how upset are you? It's a pretty abstract concept, right? And it's subjective as well. But it starts to make it a little bit more concrete and a little bit more visual and a little bit something, because if you don't have words for it and you can't concretize it to a certain extent, then you can't really share it. And sharing our emotional experience with others is how we connect best. And that's how we know how to connect with each other. Anything that helps that. And the other thing, to just add on to what you said, Sherry, people learn things in so many different ways. And so I'm not saying that visually or metaphors or acronyms, I'm a huge acronym person, mostly because I have a terrible memory, but, I'm not saying that those are always the way that other people learn. But I have found that people need to hear something, particularly complex things, 15 different ways, examples, stories, metaphors, illustrations, acronyms, not just the facts over and over again, but ways to engage their brain and be involved in it until they can really start to understand it.
I love that answer. Speaking of acronyms, today we are going to talk about the Come To worksheet and method, one of your inventions. And this is a method to complain constructively. Now, just to clarify, Lara, you're not suggesting that couples should learn how to not complain or to avoid conflict and just live this harmonious, never disrupted life. This is a tool to manage conflict better. Is that an accurate description?
That is correct. So my practice is about half individuals, half couples, and
Okay.
I specialize in relationship issues. And I pound the drum about conflict. In fact, to me, and comes as a surprise to a lot of conflict avoidant couples, that a lot of times so the way I think about conflict is it has to happen in any relationship eventually. And sometimes it can be, with high conflict couples, it can be like a fire that burns out of control and it can engulf the house. But for conflict avoidant couples, it can be a fire that burns out gradually over time and can't come back again. So your job as a couple, is to make sure that you keep the fire burning. And by that, I mean having fairly regular conflict. Now, you don't have to have it in a hostile way. You don't have to fight necessarily, but you have to be able to talk about the stuff that bothers you. And it's really tough for people. It's tough for both sides. It's tough for high conflict people to be able to say it in a way that's digestible, that doesn't have kind of like spikes on it and draw blood. And it's tough for people who are conflict avoidant to even think about how to bring up issues or to have the courage to do it. So it's nice to have a little bit of a structure to be able to do that.
Do you often find people on different ends of? Is this a spectrum? I mean, we talk about people coming in hot or people that are shut down. Are people usually one or the other, or do you find a variance in the middle as well?
So you kind of asked two different questions there. One is like emotionally, whether people, end up being either folks that come in hot or like shut down and go cold. And I think there's some overlap here. I think generally speaking, those folks are different, but you do have some people who can experience a wide range of things. So sometimes they feel really angry and sometimes they shut down when they're upset, just depending on the situation. When it comes to conflict, I think a lot of our conflict style is learned in our families of origin. And, it's also associated with, just our genetic inheritance. So some of us just were born loud. I'm a person who's very comfortable with conflict, and I come from a family that's pretty comfortable with conflict, but I'm married to somebody who's very conflict avoidant. So we're a mixed couple. And there's that dynamic as well. And of course, it's on a spectrum, right? I mean, what you kind of want is to be able to be somebody who's sort of in the middle, right? Where you're not burning out of control, but you're not letting the fire go out. So you're bringing up conflict, but you're doing it in a healthy way.
I wonder if that fits into the opposites attract kind of cliche, because you and I have that as well. I'm comfortable with conflict, like to the point where if I can sense conflict and we can't address it, I'm completely uncomfortable. Like, we have to deal with this now. And you're more on the conflict avoidance side of things. Do you find that when couples come and see you, is there usually is that opposites attract apply here? Or are there usually people on both sides, or not necessarily?
There's a lot of opposites attract, so that is definitely a thing that happens. But there are plenty of couples that gravitate towards each other because they both don't like conflict, and so they want a peaceful house. The problem is that peaceful houses sometimes get cold.
Sure.
So I think, yeah, I mean, I think we are attracted to the fire. Sometimes those of us who kind of shut down or have a more kind of calm, we love the spontaneity and the fire of the person who's more high conflict. And then those of us who are a little more maybe anxious and high conflict tend to like the sort of like calmness and steadiness and structure of the person who, tends to avoid. So I think there's definitely a piece of that involved.
You see a little bit of everything, I'm sure. So prior to inventing the Come To worksheet and method for conflict management, did you try other interventions? Is this a tweaking of what was already out there, or did you find just a gap in the tools available and really wanted to create something new?
So that's a good question.
Well, thanks.
There's a lot of literature on this. Um, there's the Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg, the Gottmans, who are big relationship psychologists in Seattle. I mean, they've done a lot of research and they have ideas on how you address complaints. For a long time, I was running with this acronym that's not actually a word, and it was OMFAR, OMFAR. I mean,
But you liked all those letters, huh?
I mean, when I'm at rest, my brain is like spinning, thinking of better acronyms. Like, oh, maybe I can make a better acronym for that. So Come To is a much better acronym than OMFAR. So and it's just over time having implemented it, and I guinea pig my poor clients. I guinea pig on them all the time, and so they're trying things out, and I'll be like, well, that didn't work. And this is another like soapbox that I'm standing on these days. I want to reclaim the word failure, because I really think like life is just a series of short-term experiments, most of them.
Yeah.
And you're gathering data constantly. So obviously some are going to be more successful than others, but like failure is part of the game. And if you don't get out there and fail, then you're not going to make anything. So I
Yeah.
would say OMFAR. I'm not sure if I would call it like an abject failure, but it definitely wasn't quite it.
Yeah,
But
it's a
over
stepping stone
time,
to where you wanted to get to. But yeah,
right.
that's not going to roll off the tongue. So
No, it was not. It's not the kind of thing that people are going to remember.
it's
But
not a failure as long as we learn from it. So mission
yes,
accomplished, Lara.
yeah, there you go. Or it is a failure and it's okay to fail. Fail more
Yeah.
often. Fail frequently.
One of the,
So
go ahead.
I was just going to say, it was a process of trying things out with clients and having them be like, I don't understand this. I don't get this part, or having their partner react really big to things, that I would kind of go back to the drawing board and add like a new short-term experiment in and then try that out. So it has been a little bit of tinkering that's gotten me to this point.
That's great. Well, I love the point that you're at, and we're going to work through live right here on the Intoxicated podcast an example of how the worksheet and method work. But before we do that, like a last question on the development and where you've gotten to, are there particular types of conflict that the method and worksheet are designed to help people work through? Is there a prevalence of issues that couples bring to you and say, is it always about child rearing, or is it always about sex, or is it always about work-life balance or distribution of workload within the house, or is it more kind of a framework that you can use on any kind of conflict?
So essentially what the come to method is a structured method to complain that you can use independently. So in other words, even if you're in couples counseling, you and your partner are in couples counseling, these are some of the methods I think that the counselor might use to help you structure a complaint. But using this method, you can do it alone. And I think it's better used for sort of lower intensity topics to mid intensity topics.
Okay.
The higher intensity topics are probably going to take a little bit more to be able to get through. So, for example, but it brings up a lot of things. There's a lot of things that this can be connected to. So, for example, if you got a complaint about your spouse leaving their dishes and the dirty dishes in the sink at night, a lot of this is it's a complaint about something they did, but it's talking about you. It's talking about what this is connected to for you, what this means, why it's important to you that the sink is clean when you get up in the morning, why that gives you a sense of peace, why it is that something about making everything nice at night just gives you a sense of like keeping everything together in your life, whatever it is, right? It can be connected to something deeper. It doesn't have to be just about the dishes. But my sense is for kind of like low to mid intensity topics, it works pretty well. Once you get up into a high intensity topic, you might need, a little bit more help, maybe from a couples counselor, in order to be able to have some of those conversations.
That's great. I honestly was a little nervous to ask that question because I thought you were going to say, "Yeah, Matt, it's for everything." I'm really glad that you clarified that, because the last thing I want is for our listeners to try this. I mean, the vast majority of our audience has some relationship to alcoholism, very traumatic, very chaotic, very high stress things that they've been through. And I would hate for someone to print off this worksheet from your website and say, we're going to fix our alcoholic relationship with this thing, and then consider themselves to be, I love your reclaiming of the word failure, but consider themselves to be failures because they couldn't do it. So that's really, really important, that I think people understand that there are limitations. Even though this method is awesome and innovative and wonderful, and we're going to prove that, there are limitations. You're not going to solve the biggest and hairiest things that are on your plate necessarily.
Yeah. And I think also, like anything else, it's a process of building skills, and it's not just skill building, because there's a lot of emotional regulation that's required for this process, and it's built in. A lot of checkpoints where you're kind of checking your own emotional temperature, making sure that you're doing okay, and if not, doing whatever method you can to calm yourself down so that you can engage well with the process. So that's kind of built in, this idea that there's going to be emotions that come up, and they are going to get in the way of you being able to do this well, unless you find ways to regulate yourself. But with my clients, I just think you got to do things over and over and over again to do them well, and start with something small. So if you want to have that conversation about alcohol, that's a biggie, right? That's a 10 out of 10 in terms of intensity. So pick something that's a 2 out of 10 in terms of intensity. Get really good at complaining about those types of things, and then move yourself up the scale, so that each time you're building skills, you can see yourself building those skills. You can see it landing well on your partner. They're doing a better job listening. You're doing a better job listening to their complaints. And by the time you get to, you can handle something of like an 8 or a 9 out of intensity on your own.
Oh, I love that. That's great. Well, I can only imagine our listeners sitting on the edge of their seat. They have 2 acronyms that they're frantically trying to figure out, whether it's the original OMFAR or the COME2. They are trying to figure out what those letters mean, and we want to get to that. But we're going to leave you hanging on that cliff for just a minute or two longer while we talk about a word from our sponsors. We are sponsored by SoberLink. SoberLink is the premier remote alcohol monitoring system, combining cutting-edge technology with compassionate design to support accountability in recovery and family law. Sherry, it's still summer, but for those of us with kids, being past Labor Day means a return to routine. It also means the start of fall-oriented things like earlier sunsets, digging out sweaters and hoodies from deep down in closets, and football.
Well, aren't you glad I'm not someone who anchors my year around the reintroduction of pumpkin spice latte? PSLs.
I'm not. Oh, there's an acronym for pumpkin spice latte? Sorry. Well, I'm not going to lie. Your ambivalence about PSLs is one of the things that I most love about you, because I'm not necessarily a fan myself. I also love how SoberLink's new offerings fit. And it's so timely, because with fall triggers like returning to routine, chilly weather, and football, we all need things that fit our lives to help keep us accountable.
Yeah. So SoberLink allows new customers to pay a monthly service charge as low as $19 a month with qualifying monitoring plan, rather than paying a big upfront cost to purchase the device.
That's right. There's no longer a need to plunk down a big upfront wad of cash. A monthly service charge just fits with the way we all experience life now. Our utilities, our cell phones, our streaming services, even gym memberships, and your cat-scented candle of the month club, Sherry. They all charge a reasonable monthly rate with no upfront cost chunks. SoberLink fits. It fits our lives, and it fits with our modern way of managing expenses.
And it fits because SoberLink has all the bells and whistles. It has built-in facial recognition and tamper detection, expert in-house support, email daily, weekly, or monthly reporting, unlimited testing days, and scheduled testing to build accountability and trust.
SoberLink is offering Untoxicated podcast listeners a $100 enrollment bonus. There has never been a better time to check out SoberLink. Okay, here is our call to action. Here is our ask of you listeners. Claim your offer ID for a $100 enrollment bonus. There's no commitment required to claim your offer ID while this promotion lasts. And you can use your $100 enrollment bonus when you are ready to place your order. To claim your offer ID, you will only be asked to provide your name and email address, no personal details, no commitment, and no credit card number. To claim your offer ID for a $100 enrollment bonus, please go to soberlink.com/untoxicated.
Really? Cat-scented candles? Smelling cat-scented candles. That would not be the smell that attracts most people to their pets.
You're just
there's
hiding your secret.
pet huffing, but all I can think is litter box smell. That would be gross.
I'm gonna start calling you a pet huffer.
That would be what you light when you want to get people out of your house.
That's right. It's time to go home, everybody. We are also supported by Echoes of Recovery, our think tank of loved ones of problematic drinkers, growing, learning, and discovering the lives they deserve together. Our friends in Echoes of Recovery have made me realize how little I know about attraction and desirable relationship dynamics. Things I thought were important, things like prolific cat joke telling, my skills at playing Atari 2600 Space Invaders with my feet, asking questions that are so long that you forget the question, and my love of movies and musicals featuring French prostitutes. It turns out none of those cat characteristics are as attractive as I've always believed them to be.
Well, you're correct. And also, who knows what is attractive or what people want from a relationship these days. The combination, I think, of like COVID and the rapidly changing technology, that's changed how we communicate and how we interact and how we work and how we parent and how we educate. The old rules are dead. And that includes what we think we know about attraction and relationship dynamics. Studies from even just a few years ago are irrelevant. And if you're going to help someone navigate complex relationships, we need new data about attraction and relationships.
That is why we are conducting a new 5-minute survey about attraction and relationship expectations. And this one is easy. Do you remember our last survey from 18 months ago? That one asked some personal, intrusive questions, sex questions. This survey asks for some demographic information, and then there are 2 questions about preferences for partners and relationships, and 1 optional open-ended question for those of us prone to pontification.
Well, who should take the survey?
Anyone 18 years or older. Relationship status doesn't matter. Even if you've been in a committed partnership for 40 years, we're still interested in your opinions about attraction and relationship dynamics. However, there is a catch.
There's always a catch.
I find that statement unattractive, Sherry. No, the catch is just that we don't have access to a lot of young adults.
Wait, you mean 18 to 29-year-olds don't listen to a podcast about relationships and recovery after alcoholism?
Not yet. They will. But we know a lot of our listeners have adult kids, nieces, nephews, pool boys, hairdressers, axe sharpeners that they can share the link with to encourage them to take the survey. So please take our survey and help with this important research. Please go to stigmasurvey.org to take the survey. Stigma, because that's the name of our nonprofit organization. So again, that's stigmasurvey.org.
Well, and don't forget to share the survey with your young adults.
Yes, please. All right, let's get back to the come-to method of constructive complaining. As we've teased for a long time now, too long, it is an acronym. So let's go through what the letters are in detail, and we'll let you do that. But I'm just going to run through the letters really quickly to give our listeners a flavor for what they're about to hear more about. So C is context, O is observation, M is meaning, E is emotions, T is takeaway, and O is the other side. You describe this as a 2-part method. Can you explain what that means, Lara, that it's 2 parts?
Yeah, so the 2 parts are, the first part is filling out the worksheet, and that's actually partially filling out the worksheet and getting yourself prepared, but it's also a processing process. So while you're doing it, you're thinking about things, you're kind of connecting your feelings to an explanation for them. And as you kind of weave back and forth between your right brain and your left brain, which is the experiencing side of things on the right hand side and the explaining part of things on the left hand side, that's
I
what
didn't know
emotional
that.
processing is. It's that thing of being able to experience and explain at the same time. That's emotional processing. Yeah. So this gives you a way to do that, right? So you're doing some processing as you go. I'm not saying it's going to take you down to a like an emotional temperature of 0, but probably you'll come down a couple of degrees in temperature just by filling out the worksheet. Then after that, you've got the worksheet all filled out and you're ready to deliver your complaint. So it's filling out the worksheet is part 1. Part 2 is take this to your partner and deliver your complaint. Those are the 2 parts.
I want to offer some anecdotal evidence for how I think that's really effective, that you divide it that way and give people the mindset that it's 2 parts. We do a lot of writing with people. And what I've come to learn is sometimes, even though we create a safe environment, or we try to, for people to share their writing, sometimes that's too much to ask. But the writing it down in and of itself, that is a hugely therapeutic process, even if it's never delivered. I'm wondering if you have experience with that. Maybe somebody's partner is such a hothead that getting over that hump to delivering the complaint, maybe that takes some time or some working up the nerve for. Is just filling out the worksheet, is there some therapeutic benefit to that, even if you don't do part 2?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you can fill out the worksheet and shred it if you want to. If your partner is not the kind of person who's going to take this well, even if you've delivered it in the softest possible way, but just to be able to understand that you have a complaint that you could verbalize in the best possible way, you could keep your side of the street totally clean. I think it's worth doing. And just, putting pen to paper, I think of this all the time. I don't know about you all, but people have a lot of hangups about journaling. Journaling to me, I mean, it depends, right? Like there's lots of different, but if you're doing it for emotional processing, which I do all the time, right? Something that's upsetting me and I can't, I don't have somebody that I can just process it with in that moment. I'll write it down. Now that I'm not keeping that for posterity. I'm going to shred that sucker afterward or rip it up into 1,000 pages. I don't need that to be, it tucked away in some drawer somewhere that somebody's going to find. But it really helps me to get centered. It helps me to understand what it is that's important to me and meaningful to me. And so I think that process of writing things down is really important, regardless of whether you deliver it or not.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Obviously, as a writer, I find huge benefits to writing. One of the things that's interesting to me is when I write something down that I think I've gone over in my head 100 times, I will inevitably see a different angle to it. There really is a processing process. I know that's not very good word
I know.
usage.
Wouldn't it be better if there's like another word for it?
I know. But it is amazing how it doesn't matter how much time I have spent just ad nauseum going over and over something. I think I've beaten that dead horse to a pulp, and then I write it down and 3 new insights come out of that. And I'm amazed. I'm always amazed when that happens. Okay, so let's talk about the acronym. So you suggest that when filling out the worksheet, we should skip the C to start. The C stands for context. Why are we skipping that to start?
So we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but context is about zooming out. Every complaint is situated in a larger context, right? The complaint about my spouse leaving dishes in the sink, that's situated in a larger context. And the larger context might be everybody's super busy, he got home super late, whatever, he was helping the neighbor do something, whatever it is, there's a larger context to it. And it's an opportunity to give the benefit of the doubt really to the partner. And it's 2 things. One, it does help to kind of, but it's selfish in some ways because it softens the ground. It helps them hear you better. The problem is you can't fill out context and you can't even you can't zoom out to see context when you are activated emotionally. You are zoomed in, you are myopic, you are fixated on things. That's just the way our emotional brain works. So Once you start processing, then you can zoom out of it. And that's what you're talking about, Matt, right? Like you start writing and you zoom out. And then you've got like another insight, and then you zoom out again and you get another insight, and you can see it from a different perspective. I mean, the process allows you to kind of see things with a wider angle lens. So I suggest not doing this at the beginning. I mean, if it's coming to you really fast, feel free, or if you're not super activated about it, go ahead. But I think it's usually better to wait till the end.
Yeah, I have read about this, but I love the way you described it, because that gave me even more insights on it. If I'm filling this out when I'm hot, man, the only context I might be able to wrap my head around is I'm married to an asshole. That's the context. Everything my partner does is asshole-ish. Whereas if you work through the process and you come back to it, you can maybe see that they came in later, they were busy or stressed or whatever. Love that. Okay, M stands for meaning. Can you talk about what that means?
Oh, you skipped O.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Gosh, the best thing about acronyms is that they're words, and you can just follow the letters in the word. But
Some people can.
Apparently, I'm not very good at acronyms. Okay. Oh, let's go to O. Can you talk about what observation? What are we talking about there?
So observation is what? Okay, so this is where you are. It's just the facts, ma'am. So anything that you could record with a video camera. So this is you raised your voice, not you were super mad at me, because you were super mad at me is an interpretation. It's not something that could be recorded with a video camera. So this is really factual and very, very, very hard to do, and a skill to learn is to put what it is that your partner did or the person you're complaining to, because you could use this in a context that's not a partner. You can use it in a workplace or with a family member. But whatever they did, you want to put it in the most objective terms possible. Just the facts, just what could be recorded, but with a video camera.
Oh, I love the visual of the video camera. I think that helps a lot. Okay, now let's go to M. What is M is meaning? Can you talk about that?
So a lot of people will say this thing, which I'm sure we've all said. I had to break myself of this habit, and I still catch myself saying it, which is you made me feel this, or that made me feel blah, blah, blah. And it feels really mechanistic. In other words, feed A into the machine and B, it spits out B, right? Like,
yeah.
So it doesn't take account for the fact that we're all such individual people, and we're made up of our own biology and our own history and our own impressions and the way that we see the world and our own beliefs. And this meaning part takes the observation, or takes that kind of like just the facts, and then starts to make meaning from it. But it takes accountability for the fact that we're a meaning making machine, and that meaning is what has been created by us. That was unnecessarily complicated, but basically it's a way to take accountability and responsibility for interpreting what happened. So in this section, you can kind of say all the terrible things that you're thinking, but every time you say it, you have to say, and the meaning I'm making from that is, or the story I'm telling myself is, or what I'm interpreting that to be is this. And that way it's not as much of an accusation to your partner. It's not like, and you meant to hurt me, because it's, I interpreted that you were trying to hurt me. It just like it puts the meaning where it actually belongs, which is interior to you.
When I filled out my worksheet, I used the story I'm telling myself for each time I wrote a sentence. And it was really, really helpful, because I can imagine when it comes to delivering the worksheet, if everything is, you made me, you did this, you're only going to get to, what are we on? M, and the process is going to shut down, because we've just made it so accusatory, and we aren't handling conflict very well at that point. So yeah. I think that's a huge key. I liked doing it that way. E is for emotions. You talk about avoiding thoughts disguised as feelings. Can you talk about what that means?
Yeah. So, people like to start sentences, I feel, which is great. And then an emotion, right? I feel angry. I feel sad. I feel despair, right? Those are all good emotions. But if you put like after feel, I feel like you're kind of a jerk. That is a thought. That's a thought dressed up like a feeling.
Apparently Sherry's got some experience with that thought.
I feel like. I like that. I like the putting the like there is just going to be a thought.
All right.
Yeah.
So we stick to emotions, the emotions that we're feeling. So that one's a little, let me look at what I did on mine. Oh yeah. So that you left
The
less
other thing to
space for
say
that one.
about
That one's
emotions is that there's like some surface emotions, and then there's ones that live underneath that. Frustration
okay.
is usually a surface emotion. And so I usually try to get people to dig underneath that. What is underneath it? And if they think like that, doesn't take people very long to come to it, but usually it's sadness or fear or despair that lives underneath all that.
But on the worksheet, so there's just one line for filling out emotions. There's not room for you to write a paragraph. You just want the bare naked emotions, whether you dig deep enough or not. That's what you're looking for there, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. T is for takeaway. And you say in parentheses, takeaway. This is about me. Can you describe what that means?
Well, the thing is about this complaint, and this might be tricky for people, because what you want to do with a complaint is that you want to complain and then you want to provide the solution. I'm mad at you for leaving the dishes in the sink last night. My solution is don't do that again. End of story, right? End of complaint. But really, this requires that you go a little deeper and that you don't solve the problem quite yet, right? So if you're complaining about something, the takeaway should be about you. What happens to me when you do that? Like what do I feel? What do I think? What's going on with me? Why is it important to me?
Yeah.
And so it's a takeaway that's about me, the person complaining. That's it's hard. It's, again, these are skills that are a little bit tough. So that's what you're trying to get to.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think I might have messed that part up when I filled mine out.
Yeah,
We're gonna
I'm
find
reading
out.
mine and I'm like, maybe that one wasn't so great. But
I'm
this
so
is why
glad to know that there's no such thing. Well, there is failure, but failure is something we learn from, Sherry.
exactly.
We'll be better the next
And
time
I
we
think
fill
this is
out.
a very
Absolutely.
good
Fail and fail frequently.
and this is just kind of pointing out why in a relationship where you're trying to rebuild, this is why you start small. Like doing something of a worksheet like this, because it's going to take trial and error and it's going to take small steps for things that are not a gigantic problem that you need to reconcile and work on doing this together with.
And also, most of us learn conflict in our families of origin. And I don't know about you guys, but most families of origin are not very good at it.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, these are ways of talking about complaints that like we have never witnessed before. It doesn't
Yes.
exist in social media. We never have seen it enacted in front of us. We've never seen it modeled. So that it's brand new. I mean, not only is it brand new skills for us, we've also never actually seen it in person.
You're right about that. Family of origin wise, even with something as dramatic and life changing as alcoholism, I was shocked at the speed with which that conflict could get minusculely dealt with and then brushed under the rug as fast as possible. And then let's go back to everything's fine, nothing to see here. So you're right. These are unique tools that we're learning for the first time in adulthood when we're trying to learn how to complain constructively. Okay, I have a pushback with O. O is other side. I'm never short on words, Lara. So I noticed there was no space to write. I wanted to write all of the things that I thought Sherry was experiencing. And I don't think that's what you mean when you say other side. Can you tell us what other side really means?
So other side, I mean, this is really for the second part of this thing, meaning when you deliver it, you're going to deliver starting from C all the way down to T. You stop talking at T, and then O is your partner. So they you transfer over the mic, and before the partner gets to say their side of things, because this is going to be the part where they get to say their side of things, they first have to recap. They have to say a little bit about what they're hearing, not about what they think about what they're hearing. That's different.
Yeah.
But what they actually heard.
Okay.
I heard that you are feeling sad. I heard that you think that I'm trying to hurt your feelings. I heard also that your main takeaway is that you want me to know that when I do things like that, it really bothers you because that's the way that your older sister used to treat you when you were in high school. or whatever it is, right? Like that's an example of it. They have to be able to recap at least the emotion and the takeaway, the primary emotion and the main takeaway. And then once they've done that to the kind of complainer's satisfaction, then they can say their side of things. Now, I will say this is a little loosey-goosey. Everything else is so structured up until this point, and then you got like the Wild West happening. And it could be that the partner they haven't taken time to think about their side of things. They could go off and say a lot of accusatory things, or get real defensive, or get really blamey or critical. Or they could totally shut down and not be able to respond. All of those things are possible. And if it is, you can always ask them to take a worksheet and think about it a little bit and come back and do this in a structured way.
Yeah. Well, I can totally see where this is an opportunity for things to go well or go less than well. But I also just want to validate the concept. Our daughter and I, she's an adult, she's in her young 20s, and we are trying to work through some of the impacts of my drinking on her childhood without getting into any details. When she shares something with me, I try to validate it. And what I have been doing is saying, I hear you. Thank you for sharing that. And she has asked me more recently, I'd like you to repeat that back to me. Tell me what I just said. So, because we're doing this over the phone, right? So that I'm not just picturing you zoning out, watching a soccer game while you're pretending to listen to me. I'd like you to repeat that back to me. And so we've started doing that. And she says that's very, very helpful. So I think this is an important part of the process, to be able to repeat back what you've heard. In a way that makes sense.
So important for just like emotional stability and growth to have things reflected back to you. I don't know why it is that we don't do more of it. I thought when I became a therapist, this whole idea of recapping was just going to feel so like, I don't know, like I was a robot or something. What I hear you say is blah, 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 blah. But it is literally the most important skill that I possess. Let me just tell you what I'm hearing. Let me just repeat back what I'm getting from what you're saying, because I'm processing it through my own, whatever. And a lot of times I'm just not getting it, or I'm not getting what they're trying to communicate. So and I have a whole thing on this, which I'm happy to share with you guys on conversation catch.
Is that really, an acronym?
It's a metaphor, right? It's
okay.
Like two cute little cartoon characters playing catch. But when somebody's throwing to you, you throw the ball back to them, right? Mm-hmm. And that's like, here's what I heard you say. Is that right? Oh, let me ask you a question about that. That's really interesting. So I think it's just like one of the most important skills that we have, and one of the least underscored and used, really.
Wow, I love that. Mm-hmm. I love that. You're not just validating with a throwaway word. You're actually, I would think if I delivered a complaint and it was repeated back to me in a marginally accurate way, I would feel really listened to. That would feel really good. And I'm sure that's why that's part of it. We talked about C, context. You recommend filling that out last. And that's just so you can broaden your perspective, calm down a little bit, and consider the things that your partner's up against and that the relationship is up against. Fair?
And your job there is to really kind of give them the benefit of the doubt, really make sure that you can give them the most generous possible interpretation of their behavior. Okay. And again, as I said, this is kind of twofold. One is you want to throw a bone. You want, when you're giving feedback to an employee, you're giving them a compliment sandwich, with the criticism in between.
Oh, yeah.
So this is a little bit of a compliment sandwich with no bread at the bottom. It's an open-faced compliment sandwich. But anyway.
A toasted, depending on how hot we are. Toasted open-faced sandwich. Sherry, should we do your toasted open-faced sandwich?
Sure.
Let's work through one. Are you good with that? All right, here we go.
All right, so when we're sharing, do we want to start with the C and go in order?
Let's walk through. Let's just walk through. Here's let's do this.
Okay.
Why don't you tell me what each of your things are, and we'll go as though you're filling it out. You can tell me what each of, and I'll kind of, if it's okay with you, you can give me permission to coach you or sort of say how I might tweak things, mm-hmm. or ask you questions to get a little deeper. Is that okay with you?
Okay.
Okay.
All
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. So
And
since
then
we're supposed to,
we'll come back to C at the end. And
Okay.
then if it's okay with you, you can put it all together and actually deliver your complaint to Matt.
okay. All right. So starting with O for observation.
Mhm.
Yeah. Let's see. So this was after I asked you to get some paperwork for me from the safe and to see what was there. Then you questioned me why I needed to look at the copies of the paperwork when I asked you if I could see them. I know that doesn't make sense.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So
that was good. That was perfect.
Okay.
No interpretation in there at all. That was just exactly what a video camera would have recorded.
All right.
Great
so
job.
then M for meaning. So my interpretation is that I am childlike and would just create a mess of your quote unquote orderly paperwork that pertains to my situation with my sister and my mother. It also reinforces the feelings I have that make me feel that you don't trust me to be a part of this adult situation, or that somehow I've gotten myself into a situation that you need to fix.
Great. Love that.
Okay, thanks. And then E for emotions: hurt, untrusted, childlike or immature. And I don't know if it's oppressed or repressed, but feeling a little
Pressed.
of sorts.
So kind of, and when you're saying repressed, you're sort of feeling intruded upon. You're feeling controlled.
Yes.
Okay.
Controlled.
And like an emotion for when you start to feel controlled, you feel.
Oh wow. When I'm feeling controlled, I feel really hurt. It really hurts me after all this time.
Yeah.
To not.
And is it so hurt is a word that I try to dig under as well, just because it can cover a lot of ground, right?
Well, I think it makes me hurt, and it does make me angry. In there, I also feel like controlled makes me feel like manipulated a little bit. I don't know if that's, yeah.
So frustrated.
Yeah.
And a little rebellious. Do you feel a little rebellious?
Yeah.
A tiny bit. Yeah.
Probably a little rebellious. Yeah.
Not a huge amount.
Not as much anymore. I think because our relationship is better. I'm a little bit feeling over the rebellious, sort of immature kind of piece of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so what did you write down for takeaway?
T for takeaway was, I want to be a part of the solution. I want to discuss the best plan of action. I don't want it to be my way or your way. Let's collaborate and find a solution or the best plan together.
Yeah. Okay, so I would maybe tinker with that a tiny bit. And the reason is, I think there was some solutioning there, which is fine. But really what we want to know there is, like, what would it mean to you? You know, what would it mean to you to be able to collaborate on some of these decisions that are important to you?
Okay. So like, I would feel like if we could work together, I'd feel like we were really in partnership, that you really treated me as an equal, and that you respected my opinions.
Okay. So like you're really part of the same team. And when somehow you feel when Matt questioned you like that, and you start to feel like somehow you're not on the team.
I'm a little, I'm a little inferior, perhaps.
That you're inferior. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good.
All right.
Okay, that was great. And then let's zoom up to context. What's your most generous interpretation of his behavior?
So I started out with, I appreciate your input and opinion, and I like how we often collaborate, but sometimes our research or learning styles cause a conflict. I don't think you sometimes don't realize the thing. So that's your self-diagnosed issues still cause me feelings of discomfort. That's maybe not making very much sense.
Are you
This is
saying
what
that
it is.
are you saying that you feel like he means well, but sometimes his anxiety gets in the way of actually having a full-blown partnership with you?
Yes.
Wow, you've done this before. She's a pro.
Also, he was talking to me while I was doing this piece. So, yeah. So yeah, so the research or the learning style causes conflict between the two of us, and his quote unquote self-diagnoses of some of the issues that are in the relationship causes discomfort in me still, obviously. At this, yeah.
Okay, I imagine that makes more sense between the two of you than maybe it does to me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you too, Matt?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right, you got it. Okay, good. Okay, so now, Sherry, I would love it if you could turn towards Matt and just go through it, like roll through the thing, delivering your complaint from context all the way down to takeaway.
All right. So I appreciate your input and opinion. I like how we often collaborate, but sometimes your research or learning style causes a conflict between us. I don't think you realize that it's happening, or maybe you realize it's happening in the aftermath, but it still causes me feelings of discomfort. So when I asked you to retrieve some paperwork from the safe, you questioned why I needed to look at the copies when they were out on the table, when I asked if I could see them. So my interpretation is that I'm childlike and I would just create a mess of your orderly paperwork, and that the paperwork that pertains to the situation that I am in with my mother and sister. It also reinforces feelings I have that makes me feel like you don't trust me to be a part of this adult situation, and that somehow I've gotten myself into a situation that you need to fix. I feel hurt and untrusted. I feel controlled like a child, and it makes me feel very frustrated and angry. And I would like to be a part of the solution. I would like for us to discuss a plan of action, and I would like collaboration together, because it makes me feel like you do not trust me to have an adult response. I added that.
Yeah,
because I think that's something that I feel like I don't feel like an adult sometimes when some of these situations like this crop
okay, so
up.
I as you're saying this, I feel like one of the emotions in there is that you feel like there's a little bit of inadequacy that this brings up for you. You feel kind of inadequate and like maybe a little like a little tense or kind of anxious about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. Yeah, this was paperwork that was signed many, many years ago, and I don't exactly remember why. And now we're like faced with this situation that we need to get this resolved. And then I'm like, I don't remember. It was in 2014. So I do feel inadequate because you're always talking about how well I remember everything. I mean, looking back, I'm thinking that was probably some of the worst times of the drinking and the relationship. So probably I wasn't thinking clearly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So your takeaway, and I'm just gonna wrap up your takeaway a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say your takeaway about you is that that's really important to you as you move like forward in your marriage and your relationship, that you continue to be on a team together and that you have kind of equal status, and that it's important because you want to be able to bring your skills to the table as well. Is that, am I halfway there?
Yeah, mostly. Yeah. Just being
Mostly
equal, being a little bit more equal. You know, sometimes I do feel like some of my skill set is more domestic. So I do feel a little less than kind of in a traditional relationship. So I do feel some inadequacy in bigger legal sort of things that are going on currently. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I think we got there. The first takeaway that you had was a little bit solution-y, in that, and it's going to land harder, I think, when it's not as much about you. It's about like, I think we need to do these things in order to solve the problem here. So when it's just about you and it's like, I I want to feel more capable. I want to feel like I'm part of this team. I think I can. I think I could be a good part of the team, but you might need to bring me along a little bit because, you know, my skills, I've been honing my skills in another place for a while.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I was like, after you discussed, I was like, oh crap, I did takeaway wrong. Yeah.
Well, and let me say that and if you read the instructions, there's a part of the takeaway that's an advanced skill, which is the tender wish. And it really gets to the kind of vulnerable underbelly. And we were getting there. We were starting to like descend down into the more vulnerable parts of Sherry, right? But it keeps asking that question, like, and why is that important to me? And why is that important to me? So that we won't necessarily expose your like tender underbelly here, Sherry, but like to be able to ask that question of yourself, like, why is that important to me? And keep asking it until you feel like you've been punched in the gut. That's usually when you got into the tender wish.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do O and have Matt recap what you heard, mostly including the takeaway, like what you got from the takeaway and the primary emotion you think she's feeling.
Okay. So this is, I think you picked a great example, because to me, this is a recurring theme in our relationship. And as much as we've done a lot of work and made a lot of progress, your specific example is illustrative of something that continues to dog us. So as far as primary emotions, I hear inadequacy. You said it makes you feel kind of childlike. I don't know if you use this word, but disrespected is what I hear, or not valued enough. Kind of talked down to, condescended. These are the things that came to mind as I heard you work through it. And then am I also supposed to offer my perspective?
Not quite. So what would you say if you could like kind of sum up her main takeaway, like what she wanted you to know about her, the most important thing she wanted you to know about her from this?
That my handling of this situation hurt you in those ways. Yeah, and that because this is a recurring issue between us, that these feelings, like you feel disrespected. Am I on it or close?
It might even be like a burgeoning thing. Like kind of what I'm hearing is like this is a request that's being made here of like sharing responsibility, sharing knowledge, sharing, some of the it's a little bit of intimacy here of being able to kind of work together on some of these things. And I was hearing Sherry kind of make that request of like, I want to be able to do this with you.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So first of all, Sherry, how did it feel to go through the process?
I think it was really interesting. It made me, the emotions, like I'll just say I've kind of always been the typical quote unquote guy in the relationship that I don't really know a lot of my emotions because I'm a stuffer and I've repressed a lot of emotions and put on a fake smile and gone on. And most of my life, I think like I do have a tendency to kind of, unless it's angry or feistiness, kind of suppress some of those emotions. So I think it was really hard for me to try to come up with some of the emotions that were behind some of this reoccurring theme. That I think was a really hard part. The takeaway I struggled with because I really wanted to have a solution, and I kept trying to be like, no, but it just kept coming out as I was writing. I really wanted to work on a solution, so I do need to practice that. So I thought it was really good that I see where my weak points are, naming true emotions and not just having sort of a blanket emotion are kind of falling into classifying as like just mad, sad, happy, glad, basic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It helps you explore yourself a bit. And,
Yeah.
And
I
I mean,
like the
I don't know about
observation.
weakness, but place where you're growing, right? Like that's the edge of your growth right there that you're pushing outward is kind of where those points at which you felt like it was harder to be able to put words to it.
Yeah. And the observation piece, I think, is as hard as it can be to not put your perspective in on that. I think that's really, really helpful because we don't add our own perspective and interpretation or try to guess what the other person is feeling. And I think that can really help bring to the table a discussion about this is what the situation looked like from an outside observer or from the video camera. There's no inflection, no perspective, and here's what happened.
And
Now
nothing
let's
to
move
argue
through.
about, really, because I mean,
Right.
I will see couples go round and round and round just arguing about no sooner does somebody have something that's coming out of their mouth that their partner's like, that didn't happen, that's not true. I mean, you're not allowed to do this in this structure. You're supposed to keep your mouth shut while your partner is saying the thing, but it's just a lot less likely if you're just saying the facts.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about you, Matt? How did it land on you?
Well, fine, good, really. As she was talking, I didn't know, like, just so you know in advance, I didn't know what she was going to write about, but the situation is fresh enough that I remember it just happened a couple nights ago. And so I found that her perspective, like in the video camera portion, felt like she was really accurate. I didn't feel like she was, twisting the facts or bringing in emotions there. I thought that was good. So that when she did get to her emotions, I felt a lot of compassion and empathy for, yeah, that thing happened. That's pretty much exactly how it happened. And I bet that sucked for you. Let's hear how it sucked for you. So when you were sharing the emotions, I was like, I felt really open to that. The thing that I'm feeling when it comes to the other side, when it came to my turn to recap, and I appreciate your coaching through the recap and your help with that as well, Sherry. I did feel a kind of burning desire to give my perspective
I bet.
to share a little further. Is there place for that or not place for that?
Yeah, there is. So once we didn't give you an opportunity to do that, but you can have an opportunity here if you want. But once you do the recap, then you can. But part of this process is a delay of gratification. It's building that muscle of because it's good conflict is a lot about listening, one person at a time, right? Particularly if you get above a certain level of intensity, like you can have a back and forth conversation where Sherry's like, this happened. You're like, no, it didn't. And she was like, no, just listen to me for a second. And you say, okay. And then, right, you can kind of go back and forth about intensity at level like 3 or 4. And at that point, it taps out. Like you can't do it anymore. And at that point, you really need these kind of structured conversations where one person is talking and the other person's listening. And just that delay of gratification of like, but that's not, I didn't mean to, like that's hard to do. But if you can pull yourself back and build that muscle, then you really give your partner space to be able to reveal a lot more about themselves. Even if it's uncomfortable to hear or it feels like they're in pain and you want to soothe them and reassure them, don't do it. Because they're really at that part where they're exploring themselves and they're revealing a lot, and you can get in the way and step on it. So I think it's part of the process, but also there is a spot where you're allowed to give your side of things.
I love you describing that as the building of a muscle
and the delayed gratification.
Yeah, I mean, it did feel like, okay, we're on M, we're on E, like I want to say something, but that's how I always feel about everything always. So it doesn't have to be
and so that and some people
or...
are really good at the speaking part of this or the complaining part, and some people are really good at like the kind of listening and responding. And wherever your growth edge is, just like Sherry pointed out, like that's the place where you need more reps
Yeah.
And the nice thing about thinking of these as building skills or like building strength or building muscles is when you're feeling that anxiety come up, like I'm more like Matt, right? Like I want to address this. I want to get it out of the way. It's been a lot of work for me to like pull myself back, get myself to fill out a form, do the processing first before I approach and talk about it. And that whole time that the anxiety is coming up, I'm telling myself, this is good for me. I am building a skill here. I am getting
Yeah.
stronger and better at this. And it's not just,
Yeah.
it doesn't just feel like it's pointless.
At one point you said that part of what Sherry was sharing was a little too solution-y. Is this more about awareness and developing listening skills, building those muscles like what you're talking about, as opposed to coming up with a resolution?
Yeah, I mean, you'll hear me say this all the time. Like, I think it is a big issue. People jump to solutions so fast, and particularly for really tangled up issues. This is one of them, honestly. Like, it sounds to me like this is an area for the two of you that's maybe a little bit new and that you're stepping into, and you're a little wobbly at it right now. And you're going to have to check in with each other a lot about how you're feeling and what's going on and whether anybody's stepping on each other's toes. um, these are the kinds of things where it's better to just not like come up with a solution and then not hear all the building blocks that built that solution up. Right. So Sherry came in with like, and my solution is we should work together and we should collaborate. But really, when she pulled back a little bit, instead of her like handing you a Lego structure of like, here's my solution for you, accept my solution. Instead, she was giving you the bricks. Here are all the bricks. This is why it's important to me. And then the nice thing about that is that, Matt, when you have a chance to share, you can add your bricks to it. And then you guys can build a solution out of both of those that work for you both.
I really love that. It really frustrates me when for instance, when I read a book and the professional that's written this book that has years of experience with whatever this dilemma is that they're writing about, they diagnose the problem in a way that feels so accurate and so detailed and so thorough and so compassionate. And then they drop some, cookie cutterish solution. And I feel like, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like they wrote this beautiful book and they handed it to the editor, and the editor says, "Oh, there's no solution, write a solution." And then they spend 15 minutes, writing the last chapter. And I feel like that happens a lot. I feel like that's a societal thing. We are oriented toward every problem needs a solution, as opposed to every problem needs understanding, empathy, compassion, vulnerability, and the solution might be really complicated and not fit into that chapter. So
And might be based on a ton of different iterations, right? Like, let's try this short-term solution for the next week and a half. We'll check back in and see how we both feel about it. Okay, that sucked. We hated it. Let's try a different short-term solution.
What about Darvo? How frequently does the other side, do they do a decent job of the recap, but then immediately go, yeah, but you this, yeah, but you that, and deflect and deny and all of that? Is that something that you have to work with clients through to try to avoid and eliminate?
If you're working with me, you're going to get in trouble for that.
All right, I love it.
Not that I'm the teacher, but everybody's trying the best they can to be able to push their skills forward. Sometimes, your emotions get ahead of you and you're too activated to be able to respond in a way that is thoughtful and not impulsive or reactive. And that happens to everyone. The thing is, because this is available on my website, for download, if you're not working with me, you may be using this with a spouse who doesn't have this training, who isn't as motivated to be able to complain in a constructive way. So that's always a possibility. I can't stop that from happening.
Yeah. No, that's great. Well, this is, Lara, this is amazing. I love your tool.
Matt, you didn't get a chance to complain at all.
Well, that's true. Let's do this. If our audience, if our listeners, if they really want to hear my complaint, which that sounds so egomaniacal even saying that out loud. But if our listeners want to hear my complaint, and enough of you email in matt@soberandunashamed.com, we will record a little mini episode where I deliver my complaint to Sherry. So if enough of you want to hear that, we'll do that. And otherwise, we won't bother you with it. We've taken up certainly enough of your time, Lara. You've been very, very generous sharing all your time.
Well, let's just face it. Your complaint about me. I mean, what can you do?
You are as close to perfect as it gets. So my complaint is probably completely fabricated. So
It must be a lie.
yeah, I thought you were going to say either that or what? You're just going to complain about you don't get enough sex, Matt. That's the only thing you ever complain about. Well, Lara, thank you very much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate not only you taking the time, but you letting us like record a live session of how this would really go in your office, in your practice. I think at least to some degree, I think that's really cool. I don't think that gets done very much. And talking about the worksheet and reading about the worksheet and watching the wonderful video that you made about the worksheet that pales in comparison to actually working through it. So I just can't recommend that enough. Your website is Lara Hammock, LaraHammock therapy.com, LaraHammockTherapy.com. You have the worksheet itself on your website, right? For people to download?
Yeah, I've got the worksheet for free on my website for download. I also have an emotional thermometer, but it's actually included. The emotional thermometer is included in the Come To worksheet. So you can go to my website, download it, and start using it on your own.
You also on your website have a toolkit for therapists and coaches. So not just the individuals who want to improve their own skills and their relationship skills, for practitioners, there's stuff there for them as well, correct?
That's right. So I have a toolkit for two different toolkits, one that uses this Come To worksheet. And in addition to the worksheet, which I'm offering for free, there is a client-facing video, and there's also a training video for therapists and coaches, and it gives some role plays and it gives a lot more information. And so if you, as a layperson, not a therapist, want to know a little bit more about this, feel free to buy the toolkit as well. It's not just necessarily for therapists, aimed at them, but it's not necessarily for. And then I have another one that's actually about this building block solution thing. And I do that with some illustration. I'll send that to you guys as well, my building block one. So those are the two toolkits that are on my website right now.
It is a website well worth our listeners' time to set aside some time and do some perusing. Lots of great tools there. Also, you can find Lara on Instagram at The Illustrating Therapist. And you've got a YouTube channel, which you described to us as kind of a hodgepodge of things. The YouTube channel is at Marble Jar. Did I get all that right?
Yeah. Yeah, the Marble Jar channel, and it's a hodgepodge of things.
Great. We will link Lara's website in the show notes, so you can find it there and click. Lara, thank you so much for all the time that you spent with us today. We just loved having you on the Intoxicated podcast.
I loved being on with you guys.
Excellent.
Thank you.
We want to remind people also to take our survey about attraction and relationship dynamics. If you have young adults in your life, ages 18 to 29, please share the survey with them. Go to stigmasurvey.org, and that will also be linked in our show notes. Did you hear things today that you relate to? Did this conversation resonate for you? If the answer is yes, then I'm sure there is someone in your orbit who could benefit from this conversation too. One of the very best things you can do for your healing is to become part of the solution. Crush the stigma. Participate in the conversation. Maybe you aren't ready to join one of our groups, but that doesn't mean you can't be involved in a meaningful way. All we are asking is this: please share this episode with one person. Copy the link and send a text or email. Put it in your social media. Be bold. Claim the sense of belonging you deserve. Just one share. And thank you for listening to the Intoxicated podcast. You've got this, and we've got you.